Hello everyone, Jaime Gago here. In this video I'd like to address something I have perceived while talking about art with colleagues and fellow artists. The rise of anxiety around painting with watercolor. And well, I can relate pretty well since I've been using this technique for a while and had to face many of those situations when you feel overwhelmed by the amount of elements that aren't under control, especially when you compare it with more efficient and stable methods like digital painting. So, is there a way to emulate the stability and control you have on digital artwork with traditional methods? You can get quite a stable experience, yes. It takes effort to get used to it though. The point of this video is to make you enjoy the process of painting and to familiarize you with a series of concepts I'd like to introduce today to expand on future videos. If you are new to watercolor, please don't be scared if this is too much data at once. We'll go over each topic individually on further content. So, this is the list of things I have found to be useful for my process. First step, planning. Many things can go wrong through the painting. Colors that change their hue when they dry, areas that bleed into others, pencil lines getting lost after you apply the very first layer. Would be nice to have some predictability over those, doesn't it? Well, if this part is a must in visual arts, it's even more valuable here. From reference gathering to color sketches, we'll need to get a sight on how we are going to proceed through each layer and stage of the process. In few words, you should be able to get a miniature version of your painting, where you tied all those possible mistakes, so once you feel alright to work on final paper, the process gets smoother and as mistake-free as possible. What happens when we come to paper? Paper is the second point. The thicker the better, I used to think. It's up to you to test the results on different textures and find which one fits you the most. But in my opinion, 350 grams is the most reliable one. More than that, will have a better performance with heavy washes and multiple layers, but the surface will be equally ruined if you overwork it. So in the long run, 350 grams will help you with water management when you get used to it. I usually use Canson 340-350 grams. It changes a bit, depends on the brand, it's strange. Well, once you have your planning, your sketch, your color sketcher, you have your final paper, you have that paper where you want to work over, you have to come to working your lines on the final paper. You can either ink your lines previously or paint over pencil work. And when it comes to paint over pencil work, there are different ways to proceed. Regular pencil lines will get lost soon when you paint, and you might want to come to a more elaborated line work. Using coloring pencils, Polychromos give very good results, by the way. You can adjust the thickness of your lines, textures, and even mark shadowed areas for later. I usually ink with watercolor during the final stages of the painting, reinforcing the previous pencil lines so we can have like a more integrated line work. Well, we come to the tricky part. water management and brushes. This happens to be the terror of many. The amount of water you dip, how many times you have to dip, working over dry or wet surfaces. Fear not, because the painted brush have been summoned and we can call it a day. Reliable as a double-barrel shotgun, is quite a tool. Not really because of the water tank. That only adds extra complexity, and the water drip is hard to control at first. But the brush itself retains water pretty well, and it simplifies the process since it works nicely for both small and wide areas. Yet you probably need bigger ones if you want to work on wet formats. Aside from that, working on dry or wet areas is one of those factors that will only be as intimidating as you let it be. I find more reliable to stick to working on dry. You lose a bit of that romantic watercolory essence, but I'd keep that as an extra when your technique over dry surface is stable enough. You'll need to paint over wet for some gradients though, but most of the times it's about adding pigment to a previous layer when it's still wet. Not a big deal, to be honest. Well, the next step will be something like, how can I edit my mistakes once they are on paper? And what about painting with light? So we are working on paper. If something goes wrong, it's going to stay, right? Some mistake will definitely stay, yes, and in my opinion, isn't such a bad thing, as long as it's under control. Add a nice amount of spice into the process. Okay, but we are here to discuss how we can have more control over those, right? Well, it's time to have some freedom when it comes to editing and fixing your painting mistakes. It's not a secret that you can use a nice amount of resources to edit watercolor, such as wash, removing pigment by rehydrating paper. The one you pick depends on the effect you want to achieve, but I mostly stick to one technique, and it's a tricky one that needs to be used with caution and ventilated rooms only. Bleach. Again, I must insist about safety first. It's a strong chemical and it can cause allergic reactions. Make sure this technique is safe for you, and if you aren't an adult, let your tutors know about this. This chemical product is traditionally used in arts to render ink colorless due to its well-known reaction over pigments. You can use bleach to paint with light and recovering the bright hues of your painting. This works mostly for highlights and to generate sharp edges. Keep in mind that this reaction takes some seconds to appear, and it's really drastic. I recommend you to use bleach dissolved in different amounts of water into something like a testing paper. Once you are done with this technique, don't forget to let the paper, your brush and your room get some nice ventilation. As a last tip, I'd recommend you to work on small sized paper. Some kind of travel journals are nice for this. It's up to you to pick the paper size you feel comfortable working on. I would suggest not going bigger than A5 though. Well, that's most of what you need to know for now. Hope you find it useful in some way. I have little free time nowadays, but I'll try to bring the following videos as soon as possible. Thank you for staying to this point, and have fun. you enjoy this kind of content, consider giving a read to my watercolor comic Arriate, link in description.